They won't see you coming. And that's exactly the point. Power in its highest form doesn't need permission, and it never asks to be recognized. It doesn't raise its voice or bang on tables. It doesn't flinch, chase validation, or react like the rest. Real power enters quietly, radiates confidence without a word, and bends the atmosphere without lifting a finger. While the world worships noise, drama, and spectacle, those who truly dominate know a darker truth: attention isn't authority, perception is. In a culture addicted to instant reactions and loud opinions, the one who holds still, the one who waits, observes, and moves only when the outcome is inevitable, becomes the most dangerous force in the room. Because people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't read. They fear the silence that mirrors their own insecurity back at them. And they fear the man who never needs to explain himself, because his stillness suggests he already knows how it ends. This is the art of psychological dominance. Not through violence, not through rage, but through elegant restraint, strategic silence, and the invisible pressure of someone who knows their worth and never trades it for approval. You don't become powerful by talking louder. You become powerful when your presence makes people second-guess themselves. And when the moment finally comes to move, you don't just fight, you end the game before it starts. This isn't about cruelty. It's about control. It's about outlasting the chaos with a mind so composed, so precise, that others fall apart trying to interpret you. In this world, power isn't taken. It's crafted one unshaken breath at a time. This is how you outsmart anyone. And it starts in silence. They expect power to be loud. They think dominance comes wrapped in noise and shouting, boasting, and visible force. But the truth is, quieter, colder, and far more disturbing. Real power doesn't demand attention. It pulls it. Not with noise, but with gravity. With the kind of stillness that makes people pause mid-sentence and rethink what they were about to say. The kind of calm that isn't passive, but calculated, strategic, surgical. While others react, you watch. While others speak to prove something, you listen to learn everything. And when you do move, you don't move to be noticed. You move to end the game before it even begins. That's the difference. The loud ones need to be seen. The powerful ones are already watching. This is not detachment. It's discipline. When you withhold your reactions, when you don't rise to bait, when you remain emotionally neutral in a room full of chaos, you send a message more terrifying than any outburst ever could. I do not flinch. I do not break. I am not controlled. That unnerves people. It forces them to look inward. And what they find there, their own instability, their fear of being misunderstood, their need for validation makes them panic in your presence. You become a mirror. And mirrors terrify the insecure. This is how you gain leverage without ever raising your voice. It's how you command respect without ever having to demand it. Because in a world addicted to instant validation and performative strength, your refusal to participate makes you untouchable. Your silence becomes louder than any scream. Your restraint becomes your dominance. And in that space of controlled stillness, people begin to second-guess themselves. They start calculating their words, their tone, their moves. Not because you told them to, but because your presence requires it. That is real influence. Not the kind that asks for respect, but the kind that makes it automatic. In any battle, physical, political, emotional, the first weapon is not the sword. It's the story. The way people see you matters more than who you truly are, because perception moves faster than truth. And perception, once planted, becomes reality. This is the battlefield most people ignore. They obsess over facts, over being right, over telling their side. But in the real world, facts don't win wars. Optics do. You could be brilliant, honest, even justified, but if you appear frantic, uncertain, or reactive, you've already lost the advantage. People don't follow the truth, they follow the one who looks like they're in control. And that's why composure is not a luxury. It's your first layer of armor. When chaos erupts, the person who stays calm owns the room. When accusations fly, the one who remains quiet makes everyone lean in. And when you're under pressure, smiling, subtly speaking last, and never interrupting creates more fear than any threat ever could. The crowd always believes the one who looks like they don't need to convince anyone. This isn't manipulation, it's strategy. Because you're not just protecting your image, you're controlling the narrative. You're planting a seed that says, I am not shaken, therefore I must be right. The mind latches onto that, especially when others are scrambling to explain themselves. Every word they speak becomes a liability. Every interruption is a tell. And while they burn energy trying to defend their position, you can serve yours saying less, showing less, but commanding more. This is how leaders rise without shouting, how influence is built without begging for it. You let your image do the work, and when done correctly, your silence turns into gravity. You don't have to dominate people with force. You just let them drown in the weight of how stable, how unshakable, and how dangerous you might be. That unknown is more powerful than any fact, because when people don't know what you're thinking, they fill in the blanks with fear, and fear, once rooted, does your work for you. That's not arrogance. That's warfare through perception. And the one who shapes the narrative doesn't just win the moment they own the entire battlefield. You don't always have to confront your enemy to defeat them. Sometimes you just need to change the air they breathe. Power isn't just in words or direct actions, it's in shaping the context so thoroughly that your opponent starts making choices that quietly serve your strategy. While others focus on attacking the person, the Machiavellian mind attacks the conditions. Because if you shift the ground beneath someone's feet, you don't need to push them, they'll stumble on their own. This is the art of environmental manipulation. You don't argue. You rearrange the pieces. You don't try to change their nature. You shift the rules around them until their instincts betray them. You control time by delaying meetings until they're off balance. You control space by isolating them from allies. You control options by presenting paths that seem harmless, until every step they take tightens your control. And the beauty of this strategy, it's invisible. They think they're acting freely, unaware they've been herded toward an outcome you designed days or weeks ago. They think they're making choices. They don't realize those choices were planted like traps. One missed email, one subtle reschedule, one broken line of communication. That's all it takes to weaken even the strongest opponent. You don't need to overwhelm them, you just need to exhaust them, disrupt their rhythm, break their momentum, sap their confidence. And when the moment comes to strike, they're no longer defending from a position of strength, they're reacting from confusion. The best part, you remain untouched. You never raised your voice, never broke a sweat. They lost the battle before they realized it began. And that's what makes environmental control so lethal. It's not just tactical, it's psychological. It teaches them to question the air, the timing, the room itself. You don't just defeat them, you disorient them. And in that disorientation, they lose more than position. They lose presence. That is how true strategists win wars, by building arenas where their enemy cannot breathe without permission. Sometimes the strongest move is to appear weak. Not because you are, but because nothing disarms faster than humility worn like a mask. While the world is busy proving itself, while your rivals bark louder to showcase strength they don't actually possess, you play the fool not out of fear, but out of design. Because when you pretend to retreat, you watch your enemy relax. Their guard drops. Their arrogance swells. And that's when you strike, not with noise, not with fury, but with precision. This is not cowardice. This is control. The lion may tear flesh, but the fox rewrites the entire hunt. Machiavelli warned that a ruler must learn to be both a beast with teeth and a shadow with secrets. The moment you let others believe they've won, they stop watching you carefully. They start exposing their true nature. They reveal alliances, patterns, weaknesses, all while believing they've conquered you. And all the while you are still. You are quiet. You are watching. This kind of restraint takes discipline. It takes ego death. You don't lash out when insulted. You don't fight just because you can. You hold. You wait. Because you understand that retaliation feeds the enemy's fire, but silence buries it. When done properly, deception doesn't just fool your opponent, it rearranges their entire sense of safety. They stop preparing for war because they think the war is over. They speak freely, trust openly, underestimate dangerously. And in that illusion of victory, they are naked. That's when you strike not wildly, but with clarity. You don't need to destroy them in public. You let them walk into your strategy on their own. You let their confidence become their downfall. Because deception, when rooted in patience and precision, isn't a trick, it's transformation. It's the art of letting the world misread you long enough for you to write the ending. And when that ending comes, they never see the hand that moved the final piece. They only realize too late that they never had control at all. Never leave the door open behind you. Because when you do, they come back. And when they come back smarter, colder, and more dangerous than before. Half measures don't end conflict, they feed it. Every time you show mercy to someone who would have crushed you if they had the chance, you plant the seed of your own downfall. This isn't cruelty, it's survival. In a world where betrayal is rarely forgotten and ego bleeds quietly behind polite smiles, you can't afford to wound someone and walk away thinking it's over. A wounded enemy is a waiting storm. They replay the moment, they sharpen it in silence, and while you move on, they prepare. Because humiliation doesn't dissolve, it ferments. Machiavelli warned that when you allow an adversary to escape with even a shred of dignity, they return not to negotiate, but to annihilate. That's why true victory is not about defeating someone in the moment, it's about ensuring they can't return with a plan you never saw coming. You don't need to make a scene. You don't need to scream. You simply remove every lever they could ever pull again. You take away their influence, their voice, their support, their illusions of power. Quietly, surgically, and then you vanish. Let them talk to silence. Let them aim at a shadow. Because the best retaliation is the one that ends the possibility of retaliation forever. When you walk away, make it so clean, so final, that even memory won't dare follow. If it's personal, block them. If it's political, cut off their resources. If it's strategic, erase the path they once walked. People will call it ruthless, but only those who've never faced an enemy that kept coming. The truth is, simple closure is not an act of kindness. It's a shield. When you strike, you must finish. Because if you leave a spark, it will one day burn your house down. And by then, it will be too late to wonder if you should have ended it when you had the chance. The most terrifying enemy is the one who says nothing. Not because they lack power, but because they never reveal when or if they will use it. People don't fear what's loud and obvious. They fear the unknown. And the most effective fear doesn't come from yelling threats or open conflict. It comes from silence so heavy, so deliberate, it makes the room feel colder. In a world addicted to confirmation where everyone craves clarity and reacts instantly to every whisper, your refusal to respond becomes its own form of psychological warfare. You don't deny the rumor. You don't correct the misunderstanding. You let them wonder, because wondering is worse. Their imagination will always punish them more than you ever could. And while they search for your intentions, replaying every word, every pause, every gesture, they begin to unravel. You didn't touch them. You didn't even move. But their mind is spinning. That's the brilliance of strategic ambiguity. It turns space into pressure, stillness into threat, and silence into domination. And it costs you nothing. You don't have to raise your voice to terrify someone who is already haunted by what you might be capable of. The scariest people aren't the ones who strike, they're the ones who might. The ones who disappear just long enough for you to question your safety. The ones who say so little that you start filling in the blanks and your fear does the rest. Machiavelli didn't preach open destruction. He understood that the mere idea of your potential, if crafted carefully, can do more damage than any weapon. So let them talk. Let them guess. Let them write entire narratives around your silence. Because when people fear you for what you could do, not what you've done, they start negotiating with shadows. And in that space where certainty dissolves and imagination takes over, you don't have to attack. You just exist. And existence, when made unreadable, becomes the most powerful move on the board. In a world obsessed with speed, urgency has become a silent disease. Everyone wants to win fast, reply fast, strike fast, prove themselves instantly. But what they don't realize is that speed is the enemy of precision, and noise is the enemy of power. Real power moves slowly, not because it's weak, but because it knows it doesn't need to rush. Patience is not passivity, It's pressure in disguise. It's the ability to watch someone exhaust themselves trying to provoke you while you remain motionless, unbothered, calculating. Most people are slaves to reaction. They speak when they're insulted. They respond when they're challenged. They swing just because someone threw a stone. But the Machiavellian waits. Because time is a blade, it carves through momentum, wears down resistance, and reveals truths that speed tries to bury. When you delay confrontation, when you pause instead of retaliating, you force the other side to operate in chaos while you operate in control. They burn energy. You store it. They scream your name. You say nothing. And in that nothing, you take everything. Because nothing is more unnerving than someone who doesn't take the bait. Someone who doesn't play the emotional game. Someone who waits and waits and waits until the moment is perfect. And when that moment comes, their strike isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's devastating. Because it's the result of watching every move, every weakness, every pattern. They strike not for impact, they strike for closure. And no one sees it coming. That's what patience does. It turns you from a player into a puppeteer, from a reactor into a ruler of tempo. The longer you hold, the more control you gain. Because while the world spins in desperation for immediate gratification, you sharpen your blade quietly, coldly, and by the time you move, the world is already too slow to stop you. That's not just strategy. That's mastery through restraint. And the one who waits long enough always finishes last and finishes right. No enemy is dangerous when they stand alone, but every enemy becomes bolder when they're surrounded. Before you strike, you must isolate, not out of malice, but out of precision. Because conflict is rarely about the individual. It's about their network, their influence, their ability to draw strength from those who believe in them. You don't win by attacking the head. You win by cutting off the arms. You sow doubt, quietly disrupt loyalties, with a whisper fracture trust, with well-placed silences. You don't tell people to turn you, let the pressure do it for you. One unanswered message, one canceled meeting, one sudden shift in tone. The ripple begins small, but it spreads. Soon the enemy begins to notice empty seats, delayed replies, nervous glances. The people they counted on start backing away, not with confrontation, but with caution. And that caution eats them alive. Because when someone who once stood with you now stands slightly back, the message is louder than betrayal. It says, "You're not safe anymore." Paranoia is the first crack. They begin to question everyone. And in that unraveling, their power collapses not because you attacked them, but because you removed the audience that made their presence feel real. Isolation is the most elegant form of psychological warfare. You don't need to raise your hand. You just rearrange the room until no one wants to sit beside them. And when they look around for support and find nothing but distance, that's when you move not with fury but with finality. Because when someone stands alone, stripped of echo, stripped of applause, stripped of illusion, they stop performing. And what's left isn't a threat. It's a target. Let others chase public battles. You wage silent ones. Let others call it ruthless. You call it clean. Because when there's no one left to speak for them, you don't have to raise your voice. Their silence becomes your victory, and their isolation becomes your sword. The most powerful move is the one they never see. Not because you hit it, but because you never had to reveal it at all. In a world obsessed with visibility, with performance, with being known, those who master invisibility operate on an entirely different plane. They don't beg for attention. They erase themselves from the noise until presence alone becomes a weapon. When you move without explanation, when you vanish before they're ready, when you win, without ever announcing that the game began, you ascend to a level of control most people can't even comprehend. Because dominance is not always about destruction. Sometimes it's about disappearance. You don't destroy your opponent, you dissolve them. Slowly, quietly, without spectacle. You remove their voice from the room without ever raising your own. You erase their presence from the board so thoroughly that people forget they were even a player. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Not the damage done, but the silence that follows. No drama, no trail, no noise, just absence, cold, clean, and irreversible. Invisibility isn't about hiding. It's about becoming unreachable. You don't engage in debates. You don't explain your exit. You don't circle back to reassert yourself. You strike once precisely and then vanish. And when they try to retaliate, they find nothing to aim at. No target, no proof, no echo, only the unsettling realization that they've been defeated by a ghost. That is the deepest form of dominance, not just to win, but to win without being seen, without being touched, without being understood. People remember loud defeats, but they obsess over the ones they can't explain. Because when someone disappears so cleanly, so absolutely, the mind cannot let go. It replays the silence. It digs for reasons. And in that obsession, in that mental loop with no closure, you become immortal not through presence, but through absence that can't be ignored. That's not avoidance. That's command. And the ones who master invisibility don't just win the battle. They make the world forget there was ever an opponent. In a culture that rewards reaction and glorifies motion, stillness is rebellion. It defies the noise. It challenges the impulse. It's not laziness nor apathy. It's discipline. True stillness isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing only what matters, and doing it on your terms. Most people move because they're triggered. They speak to fill silence. They act out of fear, out of pride, out of the unbearable discomfort of appearing inactive. But the strategist knows every movement must cost something. And if it doesn't move you closer to control, to leverage, to clarity, it's not worth doing at all. Strategic stillness is refusing to hand over your emotional responses like a gift. It's choosing not to dance when someone tries to push your buttons. It's watching people scramble for your reaction while you give them nothing but calm, collected detachment. In that void, you become the axis others begin to orbit. Their energy bends to your silence. Their chaos highlights your composure, because the man who doesn't move with the crowd becomes the one they look to for direction. That's the paradox. When you hold, they follow. When you speak less, they listen more. And when you slow down, everything else reveals itself. Their weaknesses, their desperation, their need to feel something from you. And when you do finally act, when your stillness breaks, it's not questioned, it's obeyed, because they've already felt the weight of your restraint. They've already imagined what you're capable of. That's power built through patience, through resistance, through refusing to let others dictate your tempo. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to match every energy. You just need to master your own rhythm and hold it no matter what storms around you. Because in the end, the world doesn't bow to the loudest, it bows to the one who never needed to raise their voice to begin with. And that is the final law move: less control, more, and let your stillness speak what noise never could. In a world that constantly demands a reaction, the most powerful thing you can do is not react. Every lesson in this series leads to one undeniable truth: you don't need to raise your voice, explain your worth, or chase validation to be powerful. The moment you begin controlling your emotional responses, your time, your presence, you stop being manipulated by the chaos around you and start shaping it. Stillness isn't weakness, it's awareness. Silence isn't retreat, it's command. You don't need to dominate people through noise, you dominate through your absence, your restraint, your ability to walk away when it's no longer worth your peace. That is strength. Not the strength of ego, but of strategy. Not the power of intimidation, but the power of invisibility and timing. The world may never teach you this, but the ones who quietly master themselves, who speak less and observe more, are the ones who bend outcomes without ever touching them. So apply this today. Stop over-explaining. Stop chasing closure. Stop reacting to people who haven't earned your energy. When the moment is right, speak with impact. But until then, build yourself in silence. Control your rhythm. Let your stillness speak for you, because the most feared person in any room is the one no one can predict. If this resonated with you, don't just watch transform. Hit that subscribe button, tap like, and share this message with someone who's ready to step into quiet power. And remember, in a loud world, your silence might be the loudest statement you ever make.